Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports. And this is going to be a really big week in polling news because we're taking a really close look at the future of Donald Trump's term. Is he losing political capital? And if he's not, is it still enough to prevent a loss in November of 2026? Because last week I made a plea to the Republican Party and also to Elon Musk to change course because, quite frankly, I don't think what they're doing is enough right now. And we have some new numbers to look at to show that it's probably not going to be. And we'll also take a look at where Trump is now. And we're not done looking this week. We're going to take a close look at the stuff that Tulsi Gabbard is putting out and some other really great surprises. But let's start with this story here. This is where we were last week. Democrats expand the lead in the 2026 congressional forecast. And what is that talking about? That's talking about the generic ballot. And if you're not familiar with that, here's the question. Basically, it's really simple. If the elections for Congress were held today, would you vote for the Democrat candidate or for the Republican candidate? And obviously, the elections are not held today. This question is a tracking question, however, and you can say, oh, wow, November 26th is super far away. What does it matter? Well, we can compare the results now to in prior situations. And there's also useful information here because if the country voted for Donald Trump by 2 points just back in November and the Democrats are leading by 4, which is where they're at right now, that means that roughly 6% of the country actually Republicans won by 3 points. So it's a 7-point shift from the November of 2026. That's a really big deal because you could say, well, Donald Trump is racking up all these wins. And of course he is, but it doesn't matter. If he's not getting credit, if the Republicans aren't getting credit, the very first thing you're going to see is an Adam Schiff led Epstein commission that's going to go after Trump's ties to Epstein. That's what they're going to do. I don't care if you think that Trump won't be implicated in those. The Democrats don't care at all. They're going to use that as they're going to use it for the next year and a half to hamper every aspect of his term. They're going to use everything they can, anything that comes up, obviously. And so the wins aren't necessarily enough if they're not changing people's economic situations, if people aren't perceiving that they trusted the Republicans and the Republicans are delivering for them. And before we get to the new polling numbers to talk about where congressional Republicans are at, here's Trump's net approval comparison, where he stacks up with all the other presidents going back to Obama 1. And it did look like a few weeks ago he was going to cross Obama 1's numbers. And yet something came up, just like it did with the other presidents, to create a feeling of disillusionment, of buyer's remorse. And all voters know, and you probably not, but in enough people to drive his net approval 10-period moving average down now to the lowest it's been in his term, and it's also tracking with Biden. Now, of course, at this point, 4 years ago, Biden had not yet experienced Afghanistan. It's coming in about 2 weeks. And yet his numbers were still plunging, as are Trump's. Can Trump turn it around? Maybe, probably, possibly. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's enough to change what is essentially his destiny of losing the House in November of 2026. Oh, it's so far in the future. The window is closing rapidly. They're raising money on the Epstein stuff right now. Primaries are being decided right now. How these people are going to campaign is being decided right now. Minds are being made up right now, and they're going to be made up a lot in a month when everybody gets back from summer break and pays attention to the news. That's just what happens in September. The news is going to find a new bone and, like a tenacious bulldog, run with it. And right now, it's probably going to be Epstein, although we'll see what else comes up between now and then. But here's some polling. How do you rate the way that Congress is doing its job? 11% excellent, 23% good. And quite frankly, that's actually higher than Congress usually gets rated, a 34% combined excellent or good. So 1/3 of the electorate is giving Congress good marks, and only 39% say poor. That's actually pretty interesting. It's probably because it's in line with the right direction polling that, although it's not as high as it's been, is still at 43% today, although that's the lowest it's been since the third week in April when the stock market was imploding. So voters were happy that they got basically what they wanted, which is a Trump agenda. Although you can see, as we're going to talk about, the cracks are appearing. And what's interesting is there's really not much in the way of a racial signal. In fact, Hispanic voters, 44% give them an excellent or good. But the party numbers is what we're going to look at right now. 12% of Democrats say excellent, 11% say good, 53% say poor. I guess we could expect potentially a higher poor number. So I guess that's interesting. But only 16% of Republicans say excellent. Republicans have control of the House and the Senate, and yet only 16% of Republicans say that Congress is doing an excellent job. Now, 39% do say good, so that's a combined total of 55%. So a majority of Republicans rate Congress as excellent or good, but also 43% say fair or poor. So there's a lot of room to improve here. And keep in mind that Trump won by picking up crossover Democrats and independent numbers. And look at these horrifying independent numbers. Trump and the Republicans need to do way better than this. Only 6% say excellent, only 19% say good, for a combined total of 25%. Donald Trump is underwater in double digits among independents right now. He was down almost as much as 20 points just a week or two ago. He has a real problem converting those independent voters to Republican votes in November of 26, is my opinion, with 46% of independents saying that Congress is doing a poor job. He needs to do better there. They need to do something to change, again, the destiny. And here's another problem. Obviously, people who voted for Kamala Harris say that Congress is doing a poor job. 69% say poor, but only 19% of Trump 2024 voters say that Congress is doing excellent. So Congress is getting all the hate from Harris voters and really not much, if any, of the love from Trump voters. They need to do a better job. But the good news for them is, regardless of how Congress is doing overall, does your local representative in Congress deserve to be reelected? 41% say yes, a slim plurality. 38% say no. But again, to the party numbers, Democrats, only 40% say yes. Republicans, 49% say yes. This is an interesting signal. So it's not really a strong majority. In my opinion, that's some indication that Republicans feel the need for there to be some change in the candidates that are being run, but not as much as Democrats. Democrats are a little bit more open to a reorganization of who is representing them in their district. But here's the important one. How motivated are you to vote in the next congressional elections? Now, I've seen conflicting results from other pollsters. I trust my numbers more than them. And also, I would say that these numbers, unlike the generic ballot, probably matter most in September and October. And so maybe this is too early to look at this. But what I do want to show you is that there is no clear winner right now. Among people who say that they're part of the electorate, 89% say they're at least somewhat motivated to vote in the midterms. 70% vary, but by party, there's really not much of a difference here. Republicans have a 3-point edge and very motivated, but that's within the margin of error. And overall, they have it's 94 to 90, a 4-point edge of at least somewhat motivated. That's not much. It's probably statistical noise, and maybe it won't even hold up. We'll have to wait and see. There could be something that happens on the very last day that demoralizes people. But let's also go out and look at how people voted in the presidential election, and there is no difference here. Kamala Harris and Trump are 1 point apart. So people who say Democrats are super demoralized right now, don't believe it. They're still going to turn out, according to this. But before we get to our next polling, which I think is also very elucidating, let's take a stop here. Congressional Dems approval hits record low. Only 19% of respondents to a new Quinnipiac University poll approve of the way the party is handling their jobs in Congress. Now, this is a little bit of a different question than the one I'm going to show you, but this number, 19%, has been used interchangeably with party favorability in the news media, and I've seen it everywhere. 19%. That is not a real number. If you think it is, you need to re-examine yourself. Check yourself before you wreck yourself. Please do not quote a Quinnipiac poll in order to reaffirm your biases. You could basically wipe your butt with this number. It is not a real number. 70 million Democrats did not just disappear. 7 million Democrats, half of who thought basically threats to democracy was the number one issue on the ballot, did not all of a sudden excoriate their party. This is not true. It is not the case. And so let's go to some more accurate numbers. Ours, obviously, again, over 1,100 U.S. likely voters conducted just a few days ago. What's your impression of the Democrat Party? This is the party, not Democrats in Congress, but it's a pretty similar question. Only 18% say very favorable, but another 29% say somewhat, for a combined total of 47%. This is exactly what you would expect, with Democrats leading in the generic ballot, with roughly, I think, 47% of the vote, by the way. It might have been 46, and with 48% of the electorate going to Kamala Harris in the fall. The Democrat Party had problems before they lost in November. They absolutely did. And it is miraculous that they did as well as they did with only an 18% very favorable rating. But let's look by party. Only 31% of Democrats say they have a very favorable impression of the Democrat Party, but overall it's 74%. We'll take a look at Republicans in a second. Among Republicans, though, the Democrat Party is still getting a 26% at least somewhat favorable, although, of course, some of them are probably happy that the party's imploding. 55% very unfavorable. And let's look at independents. 39% favorable, 51% unfavorable. But the Republican Party is only doing 1 point better. That's actually incredible. They're doing 1 point better, but losing by 4 points in the generic ballot. They have to do better. 48% unfavorable with a higher very unfavorable. This is at least part of the problem. 36% very unfavorable to Dems, only 31% very unfavorable. And the Republicans only lead by 2 in very favorable. And look at the advantage they have among 18 to 29-year-olds. People say the 18 to 29-year-olds are moving right, and maybe, but that doesn't mean that the Democrat brand advantage just disappeared. Democrats have a 51% favorable with 18 to 29-year-olds, Republicans only 43%. And Republicans are leading among favorability 65 and older. It's, what's that, 45%, pretty low, but only 43% of 65 and older for Democrats, only 13% very favorable. And yet the problem is that the 65-year-olds and over give Trump a pretty low approval rating. Kind of shows that Trump is benefiting among younger voters, but the Republican Party isn't. And the Republican Party is benefiting among 65 and older, but Trump isn't. Now, to look at the party numbers, again, there are some Democrats who think that the Republicans are doing a decent job, 23% of them. But the Republican number, favorables, among Republican numbers, 82%. So they're outperforming Democrats by 8 points here. I guess that's pretty decent. 42% very favorable, better than the Democrats again. But is it enough? Because Trump has a strong approve among Republicans in the 60s right now. And he's not doing better than Democrats among independents, 38%. Independents pretty much equally hate the Republican and Democrat Party. And the very unfavorable number is much higher here, 42%, only 31% of Democrats. So I think this is a real problem. Independents trusted Trump. They trusted the Republicans, turned out in record numbers for them, gave them a shot at governance. And now the very unfavorables are higher, the unfavorable numbers among independents. That means people are assessing the job being done, and it's not enough. This isn't enough to change the destiny that everybody expects of the Republicans losing control of the House. Democrats are going to get back in charge, and the Trump legislative agenda is going to drive to a halt. Among Trump 2024 voters, only 38% have a very favorable impression of the Republican Party now. And this exactly fits with other polling that we had just like 2 months ago. Do you agree or disagree? Republicans in Congress are not delivering on the mandate that was handed to Donald Trump in the ballot box. 60% of Republican voters agreed with that statement. So is this Trump's problem to fix? Well, if he wants an extra 2 years of control of the House of Representatives and maybe the Senate, yeah, it is his problem to fix because he is doing some things that are less than optimal, let's just say, and hopefully he can reverse course on them. It looks like we're seeing some signs of movement on the Epstein stuff. It looks like we're seeing some disclosure about Crossfire Hurricane and all that garbage. But America, as we've covered, it wants accountability and it wants arrests. Disclosure and transparency are not enough to undo the collapse of institutional trust that happened over the last couple of decades and accelerated under the Biden administration. And what can Republicans do? Well, most Republicans probably just can't wait to see the Trump movement falter so they can get back to unfettered establishment Republican garbage. But the ones who do care would be well advised to correct course immediately, start passing very popular, Very simple legislation that will give you headline wins. I know the mainstream media is corrupted, but if you pass voter ID, it will get to MSNBC watchers, and everybody wants that. There is a whole raft of issues that everyone in America would support, and you can pass them. Maybe you can't get them through the Senate. You should. You should get them through the Senate, because if the filibuster rule is going to make you pass horrifying and unpopular massive rescission bills, that's a problem. Because the optics on the one big beautiful bill were not good. You did not get a pickup. In fact, that's probably what made you lose another 3 points in the generic congressional ballot. Pass popular things. How will you know that they're popular? Well, you can come to our polling, or you can basically use this very simple rule. Americans of all political persuasions want fairness and accountability. You have a very limited window to get it to them. If you've learned something, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Follow us on X at Rasmussen_poll and myself at Honest Pollster. You can watch our videos on YouTube at Rasmussen_poll and Rasmussen_rewind, and on Rumble at Rasmussen Reports. We stream multiple times a week on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and Getter. Thanks for watching.